Welcome to Faith Talks Wood Podcast. I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast about everything from Jesus to joinery and seagulls. So, Tom, I was attacked by seagulls last week.
How were you attacked by a seagull in the middle of Pennsylvania?
I'm not in the middle of Pennsylvania. So I work in Erie, Pennsylvania. We're just like 2 blocks from Lake Erie. And there are seagulls all over Erie. They're everywhere. And so I was walking into work, and so I park in a parking garage, and then I have about a block and a half walk to get to my office. And there's like a corridor of like 2 buildings that I usually walk in between, and I come in the back door of the office building. And I'm starting to walk down this corridor, and I'm seeing all these seagulls flying around. And there's always seagulls, but it was a concentrated amount. I'm like, that's weird. And so I just continue to walk. Well, then they start dive bombing me. And like 5 or 6 of them, man, start dive bombing me. Let's just say your boy took off running, and I'm out of shape. And so I took off running, and I got into my office, and I'm like breathing heavy. I get up into my office, and somebody comes by and they're like, "Will, why are you breathing so heavy?" I told them, I just got attacked by seagulls. And they're like, "Oh yeah, Nicole downstairs got attacked by him, and Jim downstairs got attacked by him too." I'm like, what in the world? Apparently there's a nest in a bush over there. I didn't know. And it's weird. It happened that one day, and it's like they moved on. Now they're not around like that. But yeah, I got attacked by seagulls. What was funny though is I had to run an errand on my lunch that day. And so I ran the errand, and then it was going to rain that afternoon. And so I grabbed my umbrella out of my car and brought it back with me. And when I got back in, they says, "Oh, is it supposed to rain?" I says, "Yeah, but this is really my to go bury bonds on some seagulls if they try to attack me again." So that's a first for me. So I must say I've messed with a lot of seagulls over the years, chasing them at beaches and doing that kind of stuff. But what's strange is you don't realize how big they are. Like, they're actually really big birds, and when they come flying down at your face, so you really get to see the vastness of how big they are. So. Yeah, that's my crazy story for the week. I was attacked by seagulls.
Man, I'm going to tell you what, I would give anything to see that on video. I would laugh. I hate to say that, but I would laugh.
So we have cameras on our building, but they don't point out where I was walking. They point like down at the doors and stuff. And so I actually went to my security guy. I'm like, "Hey, can we get the footage?" And he's like, "Nah, I don't have that angle." And I was like, because it would have been pretty funny.
That would have been.
I worked years ago. I was coming back from lunch, had to run an errand, but it was raining really hard, and had an umbrella, and the umbrella did the inside out thing and then ripped itself out of my hands. I went chasing it down the parking lot, and we got it on camera. It was right on the thing, and so. For years, it's at my old company on the server somewhere on the share. There's a video of me getting the umbrella ripped out of my hands and me running after it. So, yeah, good stuff. But how's your week been?
Oh, it's been good, man. So we recorded last week, and the next morning I got up, went to Telluride, Colorado, which I absolutely love. Worked for 2 days. Worked Tuesday and Wednesday there. Had a phenomenal trip. Came back, worked here for a day, went up to Silt, worked for a day, came and worked for half a day, and came back, took a shower, threw our stuff in the car, and then we drove to Arizona on Thursday. And dude, it was just, you wouldn't believe it. I don't know if I sent you a picture. I'll have to send you a picture of it. So we drive the shortest route from here to Prescott, Arizona, where my wife's mom lives, is through Moab. Well, we drove through Moab. Well, we're trying to drive through Moab. As we got almost into Moab, there's a river that runs through there. Traffic was backed up forever. and we're like, what in the world is going on? And it was raining, and there were lightning storms and thunderstorms, and we got to looking on the phone. It was flash floods, and so in Utah, this is very common because they don't get a lot of rain, so therefore the soil doesn't absorb the rain like there in Pennsylvania or here where we live. So when you get a ton of rain, it all runs, and so they were having really, really bad thunder showers. Well, it flash flooded the canyon, which shut off the road. And so me and my wife looked on the phone and we saw that normally it's an 8.5 hour drive. And it was telling us from where we were at, we were already 2 hours in, that it was going to be another 9.5 hours. And we're like, what? And we're like, oh man, they're expecting it to take that long for the canyon to drain out enough to reopen the road. So we pulled over, cut through one of the police, you know how on the highway they have the police only things. I was like, looked around, there's no police. I said, let's cut across this thing, do a U-turn and go back. And we took the long way around. So, which ended up being an absolutely beautiful drive through Glen Canyon and all. And we hadn't been that way. But we followed the GPS, and the GPS told us to go the shortest route. Well, the shortest route took us through a area called Valley of the Gods. It's a one-lane dirt road down the side. I'm talking, dude, you're looking 600 foot down, like.
Nah, thank you.
In a Prius, and it had just had thunderstorms. They literally had just graded it and scraped out where the thunderstorms had washed it out. We're going down this thing, and I was like, well, I'm not doing a U-E on this road, turn around and go back. I said, so let's just take it slow. We're going downhill, so we don't need traction to get up. We made it through it fine, but it was me and my wife were laughing, and because my brother, if he had been with us, he'd have had a heart attack. He cannot stand confined spaces like that and being on the edge of a cliff. But we ended up getting to my mother-in-law's like a little after midnight. And that was on Thursday night. I got up Friday morning, drove down to Phoenix to it's Tempe, right outside of Phoenix, to Cody Elkin's shop and hung out with him for the day. And just hung out in the shop, and I'm going to use this phrase very lightly. He let me make a CNC bit. And when I say me make a CNC bit, meaning he let me put the carbide into the machine, set it, and he coached me through what buttons to push. I have no idea what I did, but it was still fun. And I got to see all his equipment and, watch a CNC bit being made. And then him and I went and hung out, had some coffee and stuff. And I love Cody at Workbench Con after that. But then you go down there and just me and him hanging out. And I just love him more. That dude has just got a heart for the Lord like nobody else, man. And what amazing testimony. And he has a heart of giving. Like, he took time out of his day when he had work to sit here and show me all this equipment and how it all works and let me do that. And I was just very appreciative. And so that was a blessing. Then went back, spent a few days at my mother-in-law's, and then we drove back a different route and got home Sunday night. And yesterday just kind of relaxed and worked in the shop cleaning and playing around with my equipment. And today I actually finished up. So I finally have my shop. I've been doing this for weeks in my spare time that I've not had much any of. And the one thing I will say to anybody listening, if you can, put everything you possibly can on wheels in your shop. Because I will say this, that rearranging my shop, I have rearranged it about 10 different ways. And if I had not had wheels on everything, it would have been a nightmare. But I finally have my shop set up the way I want it now, and just got a couple dust collection things to do this week and be finished. So yeah, but that's kind of what my week's been like.
That's awesome. Before we get into the next part, I just want to say thank you to the Patreon supporters. You guys are amazing and continue to support us. And if you'd like to do so, you can do so at patreon.com/Faith Talks Wood. You can also give the 5-star review on Apple. It goes a long way. And then pray for the podcast. Another announcement is that starting, it would have been, I guess, last week's episode, if you're listening to this week, is we are posting the audio of the podcast now on YouTube. And so you can go to youtube.com/Faith Talks Wood and you can listen there if that is a preferred method to listen to. We're not doing video yet. Maybe in the future we'll decide to do video, but our podcast platform gives us the option to also push the podcast to YouTube, as well as, Spotify and Apple and all that stuff. And so we're pushing it out there too. If it gets a few more listens and somebody can hear the gospel and enjoy some couple of crazy dudes talking about Jesus and woodworking, then so be it. And that's where we're going to push it to. So yeah, some pretty cool stuff there. But this week I have the thoughts of the week, the Bible talk. And so I was thinking about this, and I'm not going to say anything. All I'm going to say is there was a debate for the election, and it was sad on both sides. I don't care who you vote for. It was bad on both sides. And it got me thinking about love and about, what does it mean to love your neighbor, to love your brother, to show love to those who maybe you don't agree with. And so 1 John chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. I was just going to do 11, but I thought, I can't do 11 without doing 12 as well. So 1 John chapter 4, verses 11 and 12 says, "Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us." So God's love is tangible. It's something that we can grasp a hold of through the reality of Christ's sacrifice for us, right? And God's love should be the foundation of our faith and the lens at which we look at our lives, look at the world. But it's really cool, here he says, beloved. You see that in the Bible, especially if you're reading a more like word for word kind of translation, like ESV or something like that. And it's a term of endearment, right? It's just, like, hey, look, when he says beloved, he's like, I love you. Here's what I want you to understand. And it's something that we, really need to think about. And so God's love is the foundation of love. The world says love is love. No, God is love. And when we look at the lens through we look at the life through a biblical lens, through a Christian worldview, we can see God's love in our life. We can then overflow it to those around us. So this is also a commandment to love, right? There's a direct correlation between God's love for us and our love for others, right? Loving others should be a natural response to experiencing God's love. And so because of what we know God has done for us, we need to love others because it's just what it is. And here's the thing. Love can only be because of God, right? You don't have love unless God exists. And some may argue that because they think love is love and love is fluid. No, God is love, and the whole idea of love comes from God. That's it, right? And so loving others, we should be loving others because of how God first loved us. And so like love is more than a feeling. Love encompasses actions of kindness and forgiveness and compassion. And so it's not just what you say, because talk is cheap. We've all heard that term, right? Talk is cheap. But love is what you do, the action in which you show that you love. And so, even if you disagree with somebody, to show love is to listen first, talk later. Try to understand the other person. Look, there's a lot of things politically I don't agree with. There's a lot of things theologically I don't agree with. But as I've continually matured and God has given me wisdom, one of the things I've realized is I need to just zip it, right? I need to not talk. And I'll give you an example for this. Last week, I think it was last week, 2 weeks ago, maybe, I went to lunch with a few people from work, and one of the ladies is one of those people that like drama, she attracts drama. And she likes drama. She talks about drama. And so she was just talking about her weekend, and she's like, my weekend was crazy. I got a phone call yesterday or this week on Sunday that my cousin had died. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry about that. And she's like, yeah, we think it was a drug overdose. I'm like, oh. And she's like, yeah, she's always had her demons. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to say. And she's like, yeah, Ryan found her. And I'm like, oh, her husband. No, it was her wife, right? And so she was a lesbian who had a drug addiction and was on parole. And all these things that just like showed the reality of what life is like without God. However, I have the people I work with respect me, and I have a level of what you call it. I can talk to people, and people confide in me, right? And I heard the Holy Spirit audibly tell me to just shut up and listen. I so wanted to just say, a life without God, that's what you get. Right? That's where my mind was going. Like and I had to bite my tongue, and I heard God say, just listen, just be there and listen. And so often as Christians, we have a hard time listening. We have a hard time listening to God. We have a hard time listening to others. And even in this world digital age, this distraction age, we can't focus for more than 15 seconds on anything. We have a hard time actually just listening to people. And it was just a valuable lesson that God taught me. And as I was, preparing these thoughts for tonight, I was thinking of that as that's a form of love, right? Truth is love, and I could have spit truth and I could have laid down the word, but silence is love too, because at that time, that's not what she needed. That's not what she needed to hear. Not to mention there's a thing that we have to remember is that the world is the world, and we can't expect the world to live at a standard that we live in as Christians. And so, my conservative Christian mindset wanted to just come out and say, yep, that's what it's like when you don't have God. But I had to just be silent and just listen to her, tell the story and talk about all these, things, all these traits about her cousin. And every one of them, I'm like, yes, but, right? In my head, I'm like, yes, but, she left behind 2 kids, and there's a whole thing there. Um, but I believe that love in action, right? How do we show love? And sometimes it's through being silent. And so, and it's an important thing. I actually listened to a podcast on my way to work this week, where they talked about um, that concept of, with this election going on and how we're going to have these divisions and divisiveness, and what would it look like if we just didn't have a standoff mentality and just listened, and as Christians we just kept our mouth shut until it was time for us to speak, right? It's such a hard thing for me because I'm very convicted of my beliefs. I'm very convicted of, I'm passionate about, biblical concepts and biblical theology and, life, right? I'm a huge pro-life person. And I've been to the DC pro-life rally 3 or 4 times where there's 1 million people marching DC, and there's some crude stuff happening. And I think the best thing to do is be silent and try to put on a persona that is welcoming. And I'll I'll end with this. And so I think I might have talked about some on the podcast, but I'm a big Second Amendment guy. Usually carrying anywhere I go aside from work. Can't carry at work, but I'm usually carrying, and just part of my everyday carry. And I don't open carry, which means to show your firearm as you carry. However, on the 2nd of the month, I do. And the whole reason behind it is just for awareness. But when I do, I'm always intentional. I try to always be the nice person I can be, but I try to put on a good persona while open carrying a firearm so that people don't see gun and think horrible person, or, oh my gosh, I need to be scared, just to put on like, hey, look, I'm just a normal guy. I like to talk. I like to have conversation. And yes, I'm carrying a gun, but that's not something you should be worried about. You know what I mean? And so all that to be said is that sometimes, we have to go out of our way as Christians, step out of our comfort zone to meet people where they're at. And that's a form of love. It's hard for us. This world is so far removed from God, and it's gone to hell in a handbasket, as my aunt would say. But we need to be intentional. We need to be fruitful in who we are as children of God, and overpouring with His Spirit. And the book of James says, if you ask God for wisdom, He will give it to you, and He'll give it to you abundantly. It's the only thing that God will give you, and give you abundantly on request. And I could tell you, in my 20-something years of being a Christian, as I've learned over the years to ask God for that wisdom, He has given it to me. And 2024, this is a time more than ever we need that wisdom. We need to show love. And love doesn't mean that you accept or that you approve or condone things that are happening. It just means that you are the light of Christ, and the things that you do reflect Him. And I doubt that Jesus is, Jesus ever yelled and condemned people for their belief. He showed them compassion, and He did flip the tables in the temple. That was a whole different situation. But all that to be said, we need to love, and we need to be intentional about that. Tom, what do you think about some of that stuff?
Yeah, man. What you were talking about, the listen, there's a proverb that says, be quick to listen and slow to speak. So it doesn't mean we shouldn't speak, but I think there's a reason God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And, we kind of touched on this last week. We're talking about sitting and listening to other people's perspective and then sharing the truth. So too often we want to share the truth before we listen. And I think that, and I am guilty of this. So I just want to go ahead and confess my sins to everybody. I am bad about not pausing. In my younger days, I was really bad. Now I'm just bad at it. I've progressed over the years to where now I use 1 ear and then 1 mouth. I'm still working on using the second ear. But in the old days, I never listened. I just spoke. And but I think that, you talked about the debate, and which I thought was just absolutely sad. But I will say this, to defend, I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I've been very open about that. I voted for him twice. I'm going to vote for him a third time, because Ben Carson is not the candidate. If it was my choice, there'd be somebody else, but that's my personal opinion. I vote for the lesser of 2 evils. But I will say this, talking about listening and speaking, if you go back to the last election when or the very first one, when he was running, he never shut up. He just constantly talked. And so I will say he started using 1 ear. He has progressed, and he did a good job at listening.
I have to confide, though, I haven't watched any of it aside from a couple clips that I saw. So I don't really know exactly what happened, but the couple excerpts that I saw, it was just a mockery, if you will.
It was, I watched as much as I could take, and then I shut it off. But basically, Joe Biden showed his age, and you've probably heard it in many clips that there was a CNN reporter that asked that Jean-Pierre, does he have dementia or Alzheimer's? And an honest medical perspective, I bet would probably reveal that. I mean, he's in his 80s. It happens. And so there were times that, and I've had relatives that have had both dementia and Alzheimer's. And so I would say it is sad that somebody would let him get up there on stage and knowing that his condition is like that. So I would say they're probably correct on his part. He certainly fumbled. And on Donald Trump's part, I personally don't think Donald Trump is a good speaker. And he typically just repeats the same thing over and over. But I will say this, he did listen. But we're not here to talk about the debate. We are here to talk about love. And love doesn't come from Donald Trump or Joe Biden. As if you go on back up a few verses, verse 7 says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love." And so back to the listening part, being quick to listen and hearing the other side of the spectrum. And that's one thing that drives me crazy about some of the Christian, we'll call them Christian issues of politics. And we'll just start with abortion. You and I are both pro-life. I am 100%. Ironically, speaking of pro-life, I don't mean to get off the subject, but I did not know this until I was listening to the a radio or a podcast, but did you know that Brandon Lake's mom was contemplating abortion and chose to go through and trust God and have him? I mean,
he actually said that on stage when I saw him live.
dude,
He gave his testimony. Yeah.
think of all of the amazing praise and worship songs that you and I and everybody listening gets to enjoy because his mom made the choice to trust God and have the child that God created inside her. I don't know the circumstances around, why she was, going through that contemplation, but she made the choice to trust. And so I just think that every person is created by God, and it says in his word, he knit us in the mother's womb. And I think there's a purpose for all of us. So when we get on political issues like abortion, there are two sides, two different ways to approach it. And it drives me crazy when I see Christians or so-called Christians. I often actually question whether or not they really are out there with signs and holding up and just basically cursing people that are going in to have an abortion and, telling them they're just low-life sinners and da-da-da-da-da. And while what they're doing may be committing sin, and that part might be truth, if we don't give the message in love, it doesn't accomplish anything. And that's why I love about there's a ministry out there, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. And what they do is they go to abortion clinics set up site near them, and they say, hey, before you make this decision, come in and let's just listen to the heartbeat. So they actually have one of those ultrasound machines in a trailer, and like a RV, and they bring the people that are contemplating having abortion in, go through the ultrasound, let them hear the heartbeat of the child, and you would not believe the percentage of people that change their mind and don't have an abortion because those people, rather than saying, hey, you're committing a sin, and take a moment, come in here. Let me love on you. Let's experience this and think about it. Whatever decision you make is yours, but we want to show you what's growing inside you in a loving, kind way. And that type of approach and also they sit and listen. There's ministries where they sit and listen. It's like, what brought you to this point of wanting to make this decision of having an abortion, or what brought you to this point of making you want to transgender and become a different sex? Because there's always something else behind it. It's not like they were born with a plan to have an abortion, or born with a plan to change their gender, or born with a plan to murder, or whatever the case may be. There's something that brought them to the point where they're wanting to do whatever it is that's going to be a drastic change to their life, or in the case of abortion, a baby's life as well. But like you said, if we could sit back and shut our mouths for a moment, and I'm guilty this week of not being quick to listen and speaking a little too quick. We arrived at my mother-in-law's in Arizona, and I don't know if she is a diehard Democrat or just a diehard Trump hater, but she cannot stand Donald Trump and will not vote for him. And, we got into a conversation. I'm like, look, I don't like Trump either, but my point is, are you willing to vote for somebody who's going to kill babies after they're born? Are you going to vote for somebody who's willing to let 6-year-olds go change their gender? I said, obviously you see the prices of everything at the grocery store, which inflation is not a Christian political issue. Nowhere in the Bible does it say if the cost of eggs goes up, you should change who you're voting for. But it does talking about, how God created us. But I was probably a little too quick to speak, and my wife got frustrated. But at the same time, I'm like, it gets me kind of riled up that somebody would be willing to vote for somebody that would kill a baby after they're born. That's a hot topic with me, and but I need to get better at being in those type situations, as you said. Use my 2 ears first, and then once the Holy Spirit tells me to speak, then share truth. And so I'm still improving on that. I got a long way to go, but I'm better than I was 20 years ago.
I was listening to a sermon this morning, and an illustration the pastor used was pretty profound, and he was talking about the love of God. Surprisingly enough. A side note: if you're a Brandon Lake or Phil Wickham fan, this past Friday they put out a new song called "Love of God." Amazing. So anybody listening, you should listen to that song. It's really good. But he this a sermon illustration about the Green River Killer. Remember that guy?
Oh yeah.
And so, dude, I don't remember when it happened.
It was before you were born.
Yeah, way before I was born. But they have 49 confirmed killings that he did of young girls, and he would bury their bodies along this Green River, wherever it was at. And so they finally caught him, and they had this time where each family of the victims could go face to face with him and just air their grievances with him and just talk about how much they hated him, how horrible of a person he is, all of this stuff. And it got to this one dad, and the dad went up there and he says, the killer's name was Gary Ridgway. So, Gary, I don't hate you. I went through a lot of trauma, and because of the love that God has for me, I feel convicted that I have to forgive you and show you the love that God has for me despite what you have done. And, the killer guy broke down crying, and it wasn't a dry eye in the place. That, while so hard, is what it looks like to love. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I'd be in prison next to somebody like that, because who knows what I would do if my daughter or my son, right? And so just to see the love of God played out that way, and how we are to love because of that, is incredible. And, Christ died on the cross as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. What's that mean? One and done. His death paid it all. No other sacrifice has to happen. This is it. And talk about love and how much he loved us to do that. Who are we to not pass that love on? So, good stuff. Sad topic.
It is.
Move on to,
but back to the verse that says, if you don't, let me reread that so I don't misquote it. So back in verse 7, it says, when anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. So the one thing that I will say is, like, before I knew Christ, if I had a conversation like that with somebody, afterwards I would not feel any guilt. Like, I would still be angry about it and be like, that person's wrong. Now, after I have a conversation like that and I realize, man, I should have paused and been a little more quick to listen, a little slower to speak, in my spirit, I feel it like, man, Tom, you really missed the opportunity. And that's the difference between knowing God and not going God. So each time I grow a little bit. And so the next time I have that encounter, I'm going to react a little slower. And so, and I can definitely tell you that over the last, however long I've been walking with the Lord, I, have constantly gradually progressed. It's not been an overnight thing where I went from being jumping off the handle with anger to now I'm walking in perfect love, because I'm not. I'm still nowhere near perfect. But if you know God and you have those conversations, and first try to remember to pray and ask the Holy Spirit to come and guide you through the conversation. I find that when I do that beforehand, I don't end up regretting the not listening long enough or the speaking too soon part. But if we do, ask for forgiveness, and you're going to feel it in your spirit that, man, I really could have listened a little longer and been a little slower to speak. But, it's only going to progressively get worse between now and November. So let's try to be the light, just like in John, it says, let your light so shine before men that they may glorify your Father in heaven. So as we have these conversations over the next 6 months or however long it is till November, let's do them with grace. Use those 2 ears, and then speak the truth when it's time to speak. So, yeah, man. So what you been doing in the shop, man? You made more turkey calls?
No, actually, bird related. Funny enough, I made my first ever birdhouse. Never made a birdhouse before. I've made bird feeders.
Yeah, I did see
bat
that.
houses. Yeah. So let's see. This weekend, Saturday, didn't have anything planned. So my son and I went down to our church. So I'm deacon over all technology and things of that sort, sound system, all that. And we had some bad XLR jacks, like the mics plug into the stage, and they're old. They're from like the 80s. And so I ripped them out and I resoldered brand new ones in. And so while I was there, Eli was with me. He's playing on the drums in the church and stuff like that. And it's funny. He says to me, he says, "Daddy, I'm playing drums." Of course I can hear him, right? Because he's right next to me playing drums. I was like, "Yeah, buddy, that's okay. I'm a drummer. I'm not going to stop him from playing drums." And so, so that was fun. But then a tornado warning happened. My phone starts going crazy, and tornado warning. And so normally a warning means there's one that's touched down. A watch means, hey, be careful, there could be one. And so me being as, smart as I am, and first thing, go out the back door of the church to look and see if I see something. And the same way in Tennessee, we live there. We went through several tornadoes, had them within a mile closer to our house several times. And I always be out on the front porch or back porch looking for it. My wife be like, "Get inside." But so that kind of happened. It was kind of weird. If you ever been in a tornado area before, it gets really calm, like dead quiet. Birds aren't making noise. The wind isn't blowing. It's really weird. And so that happened. Everything passed. Everything was good. So, and then Sunday we went to church, and so there's this place. You look it up, Pymatuning State Park. So Pymatuning is a reservoir. It's a big lake. And one of the things it's known for is there's a spillway where there are thousands of carp that you throw bread and you can feed them. And then there's ducks and geese and all the stuff, and you throw bread over the edge. And it's a really cool thing. If you're ever in the area, it's just a neat experience. And so it's, cheap, just loaf or two of bread, right? And you just go and, take the kids, and they love it. And so we went and did that, and that's right by the Ohio border. And so we jumped over the border and got gas because it's 45 cents cheaper in Ohio because Pennsylvania has one of the highest gas taxes in the country. And so we got gas. When we got home, kids went down for a nap, and my wife was going to go out to the shop and do some stuff, her studio. I said, hey, I'm going to go out to the shop, and I'm just going to spend an hour out there. I'm just going to do something. And I really didn't have an idea or a plan. And within an hour, I built a little bluebird house out of some cedar that I had. It was really fun. And then the kids got up from a nap, and then we went out and hung it on one of the trees outside. You're supposed to hang them facing east, for whatever reason. And it's very specific. I didn't realize building bird houses. And I was talking to a guy I work with, and his dad builds bird houses, and that's like his retirement thing. He just likes building bird houses. And he knew this, but bird houses are very specific for very specific birds. Like, it's not, you just don't build a box and just here you go. A bluebird, it likes to have a 4x5 interior space, a vent on the top. It has to be 1.5 inch hole. And it's just like kind of strange. Like, I didn't realize they're so specific on how you have to build it. And so I built the bird. It's too late in the season. They nest in the spring. And so it's just something to do, and it'll be there next year when it's time for them to nest again. We have another bluebird house that the previous owners had built, and there are birds in it. And there's other property, but so yeah, I got to make some sawdust, and there's nothing like getting back in the shop for the first time in a while. Like, I haven't used my table saw. I couldn't tell you the last time I used it, but using it on cedar, just the smell and like the whole shop. And my wife grew up, my father-in-law's a woodworker, and he had built her a like built-ins with a window seat, and inside the window seat is a cedar chest. And so she came out in the shop, and she grabbed one of the cedar boards and just sniffed it. And to her, that's nostalgic, right? Smelling the cedar. But the shop smelled amazing. And I had somebody ask me, they said, hey, did you put Willie's wood honey on it? No. For things like that, bird houses, bat houses, you really kind of just want to let them naturally age. You don't want to put finish on them. My finish is, of course it's non-toxic and stuff, but it's, it's really strong smelling, and just kind of let the wood do the thing. Right. So, but yeah, I made a bird house. It was fun. And, actually, was intentional about it as I was thinking through my design, and, all bluebird houses are kind of the same, but I made the roof line match the one line and made everything tight. And so the water doesn't come in and that kind of stuff. And so, it was fun. I enjoyed it. How about you? Aside from doing your, shop reorganizing, have you made any sawdust yet?
No, I have not. So I literally, and that's why I text you to say, hey, I'm going to be a few minutes late tonight. I was working out there, re-leveling the CNC and getting everything hooked back up. But everything is in place now. And tomorrow I'm going to drive up to Rifle, Colorado, and do a job. And then when I get back, I will be in the shop. So my daughter left today and will be gone for a month. It's the first time in my life, or in my daughter's life, that I've ever been away from her for more than a week. And but she's getting ready to be 21 next month. She left today with her grandmother that we went and picked up in Arizona. We brought her back here. They drove to Denver, and they're going to hop on a plane there, go up to Oregon, spend a week with my wife's sister there and her cousin. She has 2 cousins live up there, or actually 3 cousins live up there now. And then they'll fly back to Denver next Tuesday, Wednesday time frame, and spend a couple days there. And then she's going to fly to South Carolina to see my mom for a few days. And then she's going to spend a week at the beach with one of her, I think I've mentioned before that I coached a homeschool soccer team. So my daughter's best friend is from that soccer team. All her 3 closest friends are all from soccer. And so they're going to spend a week at the beach. And then after that, she'll spend a couple of days with my brother and then go back to my mom's, spend a week, and then fly back home the first week of August. So, yeah. So,
wow, she's gonna be busy.
well, so I tell that story for one reason. So you remember that piano desk? So while my daughter is gone, I'm going to finish the top for that. And then I had planned a L-shaped extension that would go off that and turn the piano desk into a long L-shaped desk so that she could then have her computer over on the L and then have her piano and all there. So my goal is to complete all that and have it sitting in there, because when she comes back, a few days after she comes back is her 21st birthday. And so that is going to be my birthday present to her, that. And I've got another little idea planned for something small that would go in her room. But so, yeah, I am going to be in the shop. And I told my wife, I was like, I know we got a lot to do on the farm, but while Kaylee's gone, I'm getting some shop time. I'm getting this done. And number one, I want her to enjoy it and give her something nice for her birthday. Because I'm telling you, it's not, when your kids get older, buying them something, it's all they want is clothes. And, that my daughter is very, very simple when it comes to her wardrobe. She's not like most girls where she's constant shopper. She is very content getting a couple outfits at Christmas and maybe something for her birthday, and that lasts her all year long, and she's happy-go-lucky. Typically, it's more about activities like snowboarding or biking or paddleboarding, that type thing. But yeah, I want to have that done for her, and just to have some time. I hate to say mentally, I just kind of need some time in the shop. I have been working on the farm so much and doing installs so much. Like, I literally have not touched one of my tools in it feels like a month. I don't know when the last time. And I just want time to go hang out in the shop and throw on a podcast and make some sawdust and have some fun. So it'll be good for me mentally. But then also I think my daughter would just be overjoyed to come home and have that in her room. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Is that red oak, white oak? What did you end up doing that out of?
The base is poplar painted white, and then the top is white oak. Only reason being because my daughter liked white oak, picked it out. If I had looked at the price increase on white oak before I let her make the decision, I would probably talked her into something else. But it's all good. She just likes the finished look of white oak, and so yeah, it looks really nice with the white base and the white oak top. It's just a very clean kind of modern country feel to it.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty cool. Speaking of traveling, so I drive 40 miles each way to work. So 40 miles there, 40 miles back every day, 80 miles a day. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of wear and tear, especially on the tires of my car. In Pennsylvania, you have to get a yearly inspection on your car. And so got my car inspected. It passed inspection. Everything was good. But my mechanic said, hey, tires are good, but probably by end of summer, you're going to have to get new tires. They're getting down pretty low. And I was like, okay. And you can hear it. You can feel it, right? The tires are low. I come home last week, bad rainstorm all the way home. If I didn't about hydroplane 2 or 3 times just because of how little the treads were on them. And so I was doing research on tires. Like, I'm a guy that I don't just go buy anything. I research and I read up on it. And I really wanted these tires. This is going to get a little bit nerdy for some people. Michelin Cross Climates. So Michelin Cross Climates Michelin Cross. So they are all weather tires, not all season. There's a difference. They're directional tires that are all season or all weather tires. and being we get a lot of snow here, and there's a lot of rain and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I really want some of those. Until apparently my car's tire size is very odd, and it was going to be almost $300 a tire. And I'm like, to where if it was a normal tire size, it'd be like $180 a tire, and I can do that. And so when it jumped up, I was like, whoa, no. And so I started doing research and found a few other brands with some good reviews that have the same directional kind of pattern. So I bought the tires online. And, normally you go to Cooper Tire or wherever, and your, Discount Tire was where I always went to in Tennessee. Fantastic company. Christian owned, by the way.
Really? I did not know that.
Yep. Discount Tire. Yep. They're fantastic. And so we don't have any of those around here. And so I ordered my tires online, and they're being shipped to my house tomorrow. And then it's going to be weird to take my tires that I bought online to a tire shop that I could have probably bought from, but it would have been a lot more money, just how it is. And so I'm going to try to do that here pretty soon. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to get new tires. Anytime I've got new tires on any vehicle, you can always tell a difference in the ride quality. It's like, and when I drive so much to work, like I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, so getting new tires, and then man, when it rains, it pours. So it still wasn't cheap. We got almost $1,000 just in the rubber for my car. And then my truck. So I drive a 2000, or I don't, my wife drives the truck. I drive the car because it's more economical. We have a 2018 F-150. It's got the 3.5 liter EcoBoost engine. Great engines. They have I think it's the top towing capacity. It can out-tow a V8 engine. It's a twin turbo 3.5. Great vehicles, great engines. Right. Aside from one design flaw, there's a thing on them called cam phasers. So it's, don't get too technical, but it's kind of a variable timing thing that Ford designed, and about every 80,000 miles they go bad, and it's about a $6,000 job to get them fixed. You have to basically pull the whole front of the truck off. Actually, the dealership in Tennessee that did them previously, F-150s in the factory, imagine this, are the body and the frame are separate components, and they come together at the end to make a truck. So you have a frame with the engine and drivetrain, and then the body, the truck and the truck bed and everything, and they're separate. A lot of times these dealerships, it takes like 40 minutes and you can disconnect everything and lift the body off the truck and just have the engine right there. And so at 80,000 miles, I had the cam phasers done. Now, I was smart, and the truck that I bought has a lifetime powertrain warranty. It's already paid for itself because it got those cam phasers done, but they're going bad again. And so I'm at 137,000 miles on the truck, and it's time. And so it's a weird thing too, because I called the dealership, two different dealerships, the one in Tennessee that I bought it from and ours here. And both of them said, as long as the truck is running fine, it's not really damaging to the engine, but you need to get them done eventually. And so the truck goes in Friday. So Thursday's 4th of July, goes in Friday, and we'll probably not have it for a week or week and a half. So we'll be down to one vehicle, and we've got a trip coming up, and we're going to be taking the car, and I didn't want crappy tires on the car for the trip. And so all of this to kind of happen, luckily with the warranty, it'll cost me $100 deductible. So it's not bad, but yeah. So my truck is getting new cam phasers, new timing chain, new water pump, the whole thing retimed. Basically top half of the engine is getting rebuilt.
Wow. Praise God for that warranty, man. Whew.
I'm usually not a fan of warranties, just because they always seem to be like you don't get your money out of them, right?
Yeah.
Now this one I didn't actually pay for I probably paid for it with the price of the truck, but it was part of like when I bought the truck from the dealership, it said lifetime warranty with it because it's a certified Ford or whatever. The only other time I'll end with this story that warranty, I think I've told it before, that warranty is the warranty was fantastic. Was I worked at Dick's Sporting Goods in college. And have I told you this story?
I don't think so.
So I worked in the shoe department, and this is back in 2008, 2009, 2010, around that area. We would sell warranties with shoes. So for an extra $14, you could buy a warranty for your shoes. And as long as you kept the receipt and you brought the shoes back within a year, any amount of wear, anything that happened to them, they were replaced, no questions asked. And it was legit. Like, you bring in your shoes, you get a new pair regardless. A lot of guys would come in that would buy the higher end, like Brooks and Asics and stuff like that, would come in running them for 3 months because they're, marathon guys, come in, bring their shoes in, and they'd return them and get a brand new pair. And I think they got rid of that pretty quick because as people got word that this is a legit thing, so, a pair of Brooks is $180. So with tax, just over $200, you can get basically 2 pairs of shoes if you kept your receipt and you brought them back within that year period. So that's the only time I've seen a warranty actually worth its weight in gold. And it's funny too, because we got kickbacks, right? And so if I sold you a warranty, I think it was an extra $5 in my paycheck, right? So the more I sold, like if I sold 50 warranties in a week, that could be a decent little thing in the paycheck. And everybody always thought I was BSing them, like, oh, there's no way. But the ones that would actually do it, I talked to them, they'd come back and they'd find me and they'd thank me, like, thank you so much for actually getting us to do this. But the caveat is you paid the $14, you got the warranty for the shoes, you brought the shoes back, and you got your new shoes for free. Well, then when you come back, if you bought another pair, you could buy another warranty with it. So you couldn't like get the free pair and pay $14. You had to buy another pair, get the warranty with it. And so, but yeah, warranties, interesting things. I'm glad I have one on the truck because it's a pretty big job. But yeah, it's going to be a crazy week. And my wife has a craft fair the coming week, and we need the truck to take all the stuff to the craft fair. It's an outdoor craft fair, so we have our big 10x10 thing and, tables and stuff like that. And so hoping they can get it done by then. If not, I'm be borrowing my father-in-law's truck or something if I can, because it won't fit in the crossover. But anywho, I could rant all day. It's getting late here, man. Appreciate everybody that listens. If you have any questions for us, questions@faithtalkswood.com. We did get a question in, and I want to let you know, praying about the answer and how to answer your question. It's a hard one just because there's so many different paths we could take with it. And so we haven't forgotten about you, but send us questions at questions@faithtalkswood.com. And until next week, I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.